Hello, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us today. Um, Welcome to the Solar Utilities Reporting Guidance and Education, or SURGE webinar. Today, we're excited to share important information about AB 2143 and PUC 769.2. Compliance requirements for solar contractors, as well as how to navigate the SURGE platform. Our goal for this webinar is to provide you with guidance on the new regulations, reporting and submitting copies of certified payroll records, and accessing resources available through SURGE. All right, let's get this party started. Okay, for the next slide. Before we begin, let's go over some ground rules. Mics will be muted throughout the webinar to avoid and minimize background noise as speakers are presenting. For questions, please utilize the chat or Q&A feature that is available. And after we get through all of the content today, we will have a dedicated time for Q&A. We also received some Q&A via email. So we will answer the questions that we receive here on the webinar first, and then we'll get into the ones that we received through the email. And if we don't respond to your questions from the email, we will also make sure to respond to them, respond to your emails individually as well. All right, additionally, as you're communicating in the chat, please be respectful to other participants and presenters. Our webinar is designed to facilitate collaboration, and it's important to maintain a respectful and professional atmosphere throughout. Now I'm going to hand it over to Amber Murakami-Fester to provide a brief introduction for the California Public Utilities Commission. Amber?
All right, thanks, Brittany. So to introduce myself, my name is Amber Murakami-Fester. I'm with the CPUC. I work in AB 2143 related issues as a program manager, as well as being a regulatory analyst here. I also work with Sarah Lehrhaupt, who's on my team and is another regulatory analyst. And we are under the customer generation team under Tori Francisco. So yeah, we've been working with GCAP Services, also known as the SURGE team, for the last few months. They've been doing a lot of the work required to help vendors be in compliance with the law. They've built out a great website that they'll talk about today, and they've been leading outreach and education efforts for us. And so we're very excited that this workshop is happening. I just wanted to really quickly introduce the bill and provide a little bit of legislative background. So AB 2143 and PUC code 769.2 was passed in 2022. It went into effect January of this year. And these are just two links that I wanted to provide in case there's anyone that wanted to dive a little bit more deeper into the legislative background. So the first link goes to the CPUC website on prevailing wage. And then the second link is the actual bill text for AB 2143. So with that, I will pass it back to the SURGE team.
Thanks, Amber. Now let's start off with a quick introduction on our SURGE team members. Here with me today is Sylvia Lin, who is the SURGE project manager and responsible for overseeing all of the activities for this initiative. Then we have Ariana Fernandez, who is the senior prevailing wage consultant and trainer. Christina Salcedo is the senior marketing and outreach consultant. And Grace Turney is our project coordinator and will be the moderator for this webinar. And I'm Brittany Amagata. I am also a senior marketing and an outreach consultant, and I will be the host for today. Moving on, this will be our agenda for today's discussion, and we will go over SURGE, kind of talk about the outreach and education plan and our website, really go over the SURGE compliance portal, discuss the prevailing wage reporting flow, and also ways to contact us, and then we can get into the Q&A session. All right, now with that, I'll turn it over to Sylvia.
Thank you, Brittany, and welcome everyone here today. Thank you very much for your interest and attending, and hopefully all of your questions will be answered today, and you'll feel very confident moving forward after today's webinar. So as discussed by Amber just a moment ago, the SURGE is actually an initiative directed by the CPUC, and we created it to help the contractors navigate the compliance requirements of the Assembly Bill. So it's built to be an outward-facing program that is going to provide you with the support you need in terms of all of the guidance that you need, training resources, outreach, all of the regulatory provisions that you're going to need to navigate through this program. And again, as Amber stated, the Assembly Bill was created under 2143. And what it does from a practical standpoint, it establishes prevailing wage requirements for the solar projects. And anyone who's worked in the public works arena before may know that prevailing wage certified payroll reporting is a component of public works. Well, AB 2143 now brings it under that umbrella. So the solar work, and we'll be going into the details in just a few minutes here in terms of what constitutes an eligible project, but that's really the ultimate objective, is for prevailing wage to be paid, certified payroll to be submitted. And AB 2143 was later what we call codified under the Public Utilities Code section 769.2. And that actually defines the responsibilities and the requirements for the contractors who are working on what we call these eligible solar projects. And next slide, please. So with regard to when we talk about an eligible project, so not every solar project fits within the umbrella or falls within the governance of AB 2143. So projects qualify as eligible. This is key if they involve customer-sited renewable electrical generation facility or any battery storage. So it's really important to determine what it does not include. So we're talking primarily here about larger scale commercial enterprises embarking on solar construction that are going to be subject to the net metering tax credit. And I'm sorry, the net energy metering tariff. Now, what it does not include are residential facilities with maximum generating capacity of 15 kilowatts or less, or, and this is the key distinction, installed on a single family home. So you may have a residential facility over 15 kilowatts for an apartment building would probably be the best example of it that may fall within the governance of AB 2143, but this does not apply to residential single family homes. It does not include any projects that are already classified as public works projects. And what that means is if you have a project that is already subject to state and or federal funding that would fall within the DIR definition, Department of Industrial Relations definition of public works, that is outside of it because they're already paying prevailing wage. They're already submitting certified payroll reporting. So that's excluded for this because that requirement is already in place for those projects. And it does not include any facilities serving only modular homes or modular communities, multi-unit housing with 2 or few stories. And next slide, please. And just going into a little bit further of a definition of public works. If you haven't worked on a public works project before, it's according to the Department of Industrial Relations, their definition, it pretty much encompasses all of the construction tasks. So construction, which is alteration, demolition, installation, repair, and that's going to become key here because, you know, we're getting a lot of questions already. For example, is this a public works project? And the answer to that is yes, it is public works. So what this assembly bill does, it has all the applicable labor code provisions which identify it as a public works project subject to all of the public works requirements. So public works encompasses any pre-construction, post-construction activities related to the project. And throughout this website too, we have provided links to the applicable agencies for example, all the regulations. When we talk about the labor code, you can see that, you can drill down into the details by going onto the DIR's website. So that gives you just a little bit more insight and depth into these regulations. So project eligibility, what makes a project fall within the requirements of AB 2143? So the eligibility requirements, the starting point to determine when a project is eligible is pretty much at the interconnection date. So that's typically the first step in the process where, as a contractor, you would reach out to whatever utility territory that you're in. For example, whether that would be PG&E, SCE, SDGE, and file an application for interconnection. So that's actually the trigger. That is the starting point at which the project becomes eligible under SURGE and AB 2143. So under the statute, this is where what we call investment-owned utilities, this is when they come into the process. So what they're going to do as part of the process is they're going to create and utilize, pursuant to the regulation, a checklist. And that's going to provide an assessment for them as they go through that application ID with you in terms of whether or not your project is applicable. So the type of questions that you're going to be asked is this a residential? Is it a single family home? With regard to, is it residential but in excess of 15 kilowatts? They're going to go through a checklist. So they're going to review that checklist with you to confirm, again, the applicability, and then also provide you with a prevailing wage disclosure form so that you will be notified that the project that you're about to undertake is subject to AB 2143 after they go through and if you answer all the questions which help them to verify this project is actually eligible. So after confirming that it is applicable, most likely they'll move forward with the application ID. And then from that point forward, as a contractor, you will comply, then you'll need to comply with all the requirements of 2143, Public Utilities Code Section 769.2. And essentially what that involves is payment of prevailing wages for the workers, as well as submission of certified payroll reports. So at this point, I am going to turn it over to our Senior Labor Compliance Consultant here, Ariana Fernandez.
Thank you, Sylvia. My name is Ariana. I'll be taking you through the next couple slides here. So AB 2143 and PUC 769.2 requirements. So what exactly do they entail, right? So all contractors, including the prime and any of their lower tier subcontractors working on these eligible renewable energy solar projects must meet these requirements. So those requirements include paying their workers and apprentices the applicable prevailing wages, maintaining and verifying payroll records and making those records available for inspection, as well as submitting digital copies of the certified payroll records to the CPUC biannually on July 1st and December 31st of each year. Okay, so a little deeper into the prevailing wages. So contractors that are working on these projects must pay their construction workers and any apprentices prevailing wages. So what are the prevailing wages? It's going to be a big question we're getting answered. So the prevailing wage is the minimum rate that these workers must be paid. They can always be paid more than the applicable prevailing wages, but you can never go below. And these rates are determined by the Department of Industrial Relations, the DIR. The DIR puts out 2 wage determinations per year, and depending on when your project is advertised for bid, it will fall into one of the classifications. These wage rates are also based on the type of work that the workers are performing, so their scope of work, as well as the location of the project. Prevailing wages are typically based on the collective bargaining agreements for each craft. Some important reminders. Additionally, contractors need to complete reporting requirements to both the DIR and to SURGE. So just reporting to SURGE does not replace the requirement for submitting to the DIR. You must do both. Okay, so delving a little deeper into the requirements from the DIR. So the project has to be registered with the DIR, which would be the responsibility of the project owner or the awarding body. Contractors have to register as a public works contractor in order to bid on public works, and the registration must be current at all times while you're working on the project. Contractors are also required to pay the applicable prevailing wages, which, as we discussed, are based on the type of work that the worker is performing, as well as the location of the project. Contractors are also required to follow all of the apprenticeship requirements, such as DAS forms and meeting minimum apprentice ratios, as well as maintaining and submitting certified payroll reports, again, in both the DIR and the Surge platform.
All right, thanks, Ariana. As you mentioned in the beginning, the Surge initiative is directed by CPUC, and the Surge initiative is also twofold or serves a dual purpose. First is a system to provide dedicated outreach and education to contractors and other stakeholders on when and how to submit copies of certified payroll records. And the second purpose is to collect copies of certified payroll records through the Surge compliance portal that include prevailing wages from renewable electric generation facilities or any associated battery storage projects. Surge has also developed a guiding outreach and education plan, which outlines the activities to help inform and educate contractors impacted by AB 2143 and PUC section 769.2. The outreach and education plan includes strategies on how we plan to communicate and share information regarding submission requirements for copies of certified payroll records. And this plan will get updated every year towards the end of the year to include progress of these outreach and education efforts to identify areas of improvement and new goals and objectives for the following years. And for more information about the outreach and education plan, you can view it on our website at cpucsurge.org. I'm going to turn it over now to Christina, and she will be going over the Surge website as well as the Surge compliance portal.
Thank you, Brittany. Alrighty, so we know some of you may be familiar with the Surge website. For those of you who are not, like Brittany mentioned, you can access the website by visiting www.cpucsurge.org. You can see that listed in the bottom right-hand corner of your screen. So what we're looking at right now is the homepage. And the homepage essentially covers general information on the Surge initiative, kind of covers, what contractors are able to do on the site, as well as the process of registration and payroll submission. The next tab, the About tab, that covers kind of more in depth what is Surge, what is the Surge compliance portal, touches on our commitment to equity, and then partnerships and collaboration with stakeholders. The Education tab, this is a really important tab, and I do encourage a lot of you to take a look at the materials that we have on here, whether you're looking at kind of more general information on AB 2143, you want to understand the requirements for contractors, or maybe you want to take a better look at the payroll submission and the schedule for that. That's all on there, reference guides, fact sheets, flyers, and then we also have our past presentations listed there as well. So eventually this presentation will go on there. The next tab, the FAQ tab, another great page to look at. This is constantly being updated, especially as we receive more and more questions from all of you. I know our chat has been kind of going off with a bunch of questions. So yeah, this is another great place, kind of covers general AB 2143 and then delves more into contractor questions, payroll submission. So another great place to look. Then we have the Happenings tab. This just lists all of our upcoming events. So, this event is listed on there. We have an upcoming event at the end of May that will go on there. So again, we do encourage you to, be checking this from time to time. And then our Contact Us tab. I saw someone ask about the different presenter to send their contact information. This is a great place to go. It has all of the different emails listed out there. as well as a contact form. We will be providing that information to you as well, but just another place that you can access it. And then the register tab. So this is one of the many ways you can access the Surge compliance portal. This is going to take you directly to the contractor registration or the project registration, depending on what you're looking for. And then we also have the payroll submission tab. So the payroll submission, that is going to take you to the submission for your certified payroll. So it'll take you to that form. So that is kind of an overview of the website. Again, you can access that at www.cpucsurge.org. You're good, Brittany. Jumping into the Surge compliance portal. So this is where contractor registration happens, project registration, payroll submission. And so we kind of broke this down into 3 easy steps for you to follow. The first thing that you're going to have to do is register as a contractor. And so all contractors and subcontractors of all tiers, you're responsible for doing this. The Surge compliance portal is hosted on the submittable system. So that is why you will have to create a free submittable account first. It's super simple, probably takes less than 30 seconds to complete. Once you have that, you'll be able to fill out the contractor registration. You only need to do this once. And then once that's submitted, it gets reviewed. And if approved, you will receive a contractor identification number or a SIN. This is really important. You're going to need this if you're a prime contractor during your project registration, and then all contractors, prime or subs, you'll need that for payroll submission. So make sure you hold on to that. Step 2, project registration. This is something only the primes need to do. Subcontractors are not responsible for step 2. That falls on the primes. So primes must register each qualifying project, and kind of follows the same process. You submit, it gets reviewed, and then if approved, you will receive a project identification number or the PIN. This is really important as well, and it's really important that the prime contractor, if you have subs, that you're sharing this PIN with the subcontractors. So just keep that in mind. And then we have step 3, payroll submission. So this covers all contractors and subcontractors. So I know subcontractors didn't have to do step 2. You do have to complete step 3, which is uploading copies of your certified payroll. You need that SIN and that PIN to report. So just a reminder of that. You must submit copies of payrolls with prevailing wages for the duration of each qualifying project. And hopefully we are aware of the due dates by now, but payrolls are due biannually on July 1st. So that's coming up. And then we have December 31st. But we do strongly encourage and recommend that you upload on a more frequent basis if you can. So whether that's quarterly, monthly, I know someone asked if they could do it weekly. We do strongly encourage that. So we'll now jump into sort of a live demo, kind of walking you through that process. So let me just go ahead and share my screen so I can walk you through that. Alrighty. Okay, if you cannot see my screen, please let me know. But this is, like we touched on, the Surge website. So this is the homepage. All the tabs up above that we touched on, the register tab. So this will take you to the contractor registration or project registration. We also have the payroll submission. That'll take you to the page to upload your payroll. If you scroll down here, the homepage, you'll see, we touch on the Surge initiative. We touch on, the ability of what Surge contractors can do on the website. And then we also have this section, understanding the process, where you can find links to the portal as well. And it touches on the deadlines, what's required. for those deadlines. And then you can also access those different registration or submission forms here as well. So just another place that you can go. So I'm going to go ahead and click on this link here for the Surge Compliance Portal. And that's going to take me to the landing page or the home page in the portal. You'll see here we have our just some information. It lists those steps for you, lists the reporting deadlines, and then if you have questions, tells you where to go based off of the question that you may have. And then if we keep scrolling, we have our different forms here. So Surge contractor registration, the project registration, the payroll submission. We're going to want to start with contractor registration. So if I'm coming on here for the first time, I'm obviously going to click on this first form here. And so this is where it's going to ask you to sign up if you haven't done so. So you can see it's super simple to sign up on Submittable. I'm going to sign in since I already have an account. So just give me a second here. Alrighty, so you sign in and then you are brought to the contractor registration form. There's a lot of information here. Again, the steps are listed, any kind of notice, links for information that you may need. So we do encourage you to kind of read through this page before you get started. But if I keep scrolling down, you'll see here's the information that we require. So contractor name, your first and last name, a phone number, your email address, your address. And then these are two important ones down here at the bottom. We have the Contractor State License Board or CSLB number and the DIR Public Works Contractor Registration number. If you do not have one for the DIR number, we have a link here where you can register. If you don't remember it, there's a link where you can look it up. And I do just want to note here that these numbers are part of our review process. So we're checking these numbers. We check to see if they're legitimate. So please enter in a legitimate number here. If you don't, your application's going to get kind of kicked back and we're going to ask you to, enter in a legitimate number. So just want to note that here. So then you would hit submit once you filled it out. It gets reviewed, it gets approved, and then that's when you would get that contractor identification number. So I'm going to scroll back up to the top. I'm going to click back. It's going to bring me back to the home page. And I'm going to scroll back down to project registration. So this would be step 2. Again, there is information listed here. Please read it. It'll definitely provide guidance. There's a subcontractor notice just reminding subcontractors that this is not a registration that they have to do, eligibility requirements, and then just kind of next steps. So if we keep scrolling, the first thing it's going to have you do is fill out kind of this eligibility questionnaire. And so based off of your answers, you're either going to get prompted to fill out the project registration because you have an eligible project, or it's going to tell you, hey, based off of your answers, you may not have an eligible project. Go back, kind of look at the guidelines. If you realize you made a mistake, that's okay. You can go back through and fill this out again. But it's going to ask you, are you a registered contractor? Yes. Is the project a residential facility with a maximum generating capacity of 15 kilowatts or less that will be installed in a single family home? No. Is the project already a public work under existing law? No. Is the project a facility that serves only a modular home community, or multi-unit housing with 2 or fewer stories? No. So based off of my answers, I'm going to hit next. And then it is going to take me to the project registration form. So if your answers are different here, it would tell you, hey, you don't have an eligible project. But because of my answers, I do. So I'm going to keep going. This is where that VIN number, the contractor identification number, is going to come in. So, flag that email once you receive it. There's also instructions on how to access it through the submittable system if you lose it. So you'll enter that in. Will there be any contractors submitting payroll, subcontractors, excuse me, submitting payroll for this project? You'll answer this. If you hit yes, you'll have to list the name of that subcontractor, estimated start date, and then you would kind of keep following that process if you had more. So I'm just going to leave it as no for now, and then jumping into the project information. So project name, project interconnection application ID number. This is another important number and one that you're going to get from your designated IOU. So whether that's, SCE, SD, G&E, PG&E, those are going to be what you receive filling out that interconnection application. So it might be referred to as a project number, an application ID, but that's something that we check. So again, please make sure that that number is a legitimate number when you're filling out this form. Then you'll select the electric utility name, Southern California Edison, Pacific Gas and Electric, San Diego Gas and Electric. Enter in electrical generation facility. If you have multiple, you can add another. And then you'll just type in your project location, any contact information, and then submit. And then again, this is the same process. It gets reviewed. Once approved, you get your PIN. Remember that if you have subcontractors, you're sending that PIN to them. And then you can move on to the payroll submission, which I will just quickly hop into. Okay, so the Surge certified payroll submission. So again, the deadline's coming up July 1st. We do strongly encourage you to, start uploading payroll now if you have it. But again, it'll list some information here, read through it, and then you'll get to the actual payroll submission form. So it just has a notice here if you're a subcontractor, ensuring that you have some of this information handy. So that project identification number, which is Surge assigned, project interconnection application number, utility assigned, and then the name of the electrical utility identified on the project registration. So just something if you're a sub to make sure you have those handy. Then you'll just enter in the project name, project identification number, your project interconnection application number, electric utility name, and then here is where you will start to enter in the payroll information. So submitter's contractor identification number, that's that SIN number that I mentioned, first day of reporting, your last day of reporting, and then you'll come down here and upload your certified payroll report, that PDF. So that's where you'll do that. Come down here, say, I confirm that all files contain a certified payroll report, and then you'll answer just a couple more questions. Is this your final payroll reporting period for this project? Yes or no. Are there any periods of non-performance during the reporting period listed above? Yes or no. If yes, please enter those periods in. We kind of give an example of how we want that to be structured. And then once you've filled out that information, just kind of gives you a heads up that you're about to submit, and then you would submit your payroll. So yeah, that's sort of the process. We are here to help if you run into any issues or you need more guidance, but we just kind of wanted to walk everyone through that process if you're, not familiar with it. So thank you for letting me do that walkthrough. I'm going to stop sharing and hand it back over to Brittany.
Great. Thanks, Christina. I'm just loading up the presentation again. All right. All right, this is for Sylvia.
Thank you, Brittany. All right, so we've talked a lot so far about what needs to be done under the regulation. So now we're going to take a look at what happens if the requirements are not met. So this is going to be similar to any type of violations, associated penalties of not submitting a certified payroll or paying prevailing wage. So as stated here, per California state law, if the contractor doesn't submit certified payroll on the biannual due dates, again, biannual would be by July 1st of every year and December 31st, depending on the duration of your project, or more frequently, the following enforcement action can proceed. Now, I do want to clarify, we, Surge, are not an enforcement agency. We are here to help you navigate the process. We implemented in conjunction with the CPUC a program that is going to facilitate and streamline compliance with this, with AB 2143. But we are not the enforcement agency. We're not going to bring one of these actions based on non-compliance. So that is under the purview of the Department of Industrial Relations. They are an enforcement agency. So the way that enforcement can take place in terms of if it's brought to somebody's attention that payrolls haven't been submitted or that the proper prevailing wage hasn't been paid, this can be done through the labor commissioner of the DIR. They typically enforce an issuance of a civil wage and or penalty assessment. It can also occur through underpaid workers. So for example, if a worker on a construction project, which deals under AB 2143, if it is brought to their attention, if they realize they should be paid a prevailing wage for the type of work they are performing, and they find that what they're being paid is actually less than the designated rate, they can bring, and through an administrative complaint or a civil action can trigger enforcement action, or through what we call a joint labor management committee or civil action. So again, these are all enforcement areas that can bring an action. So when any of these parties, when any of the actions are triggered by any of the above against a contractor of an eligible interconnected project, so that's what we're talking about here, what'll happen is the end result is the generation facility will lose service to the standard contract or to the tariff. So this is all about getting that net energy metering tariff that will be discontinued, that will be pulled if the contractor is not in compliance with the regulatory requirements. So there's a second part to this, as a few of us have stated earlier. This all went into effect January 1st of this year, of 2024. There's another element to this, another phase to this. So beginning next year in January 1st, 2025, any contractors who have what we call a willful wage violation. Now, a lot of these violations are the result of just not understanding it. They are not willful. And that's what we're here to help you so that you don't get into that scenario. We're here to help you so that there are no violations. So we're going to provide you with a lot of guidance and support resources throughout this process. But every now and then we're going to encounter somebody who willfully violates the wage determination and the requirement for prevailing wages. In that case, the contractor would no longer be able to build facilities that seek these tariffs. So it kind of escalates that penalty that if it is determined by the enforcement body that that violation was willful, intentional, then not only would that tariff, it would be imposed upon the contractor where they could no longer build facilities and utilize these tariffs under the Public Utilities Code. So again, what we're here for and what this program is designed to help with is so that you're not in this arena. You don't encounter any of this. And we are confident that we have a program in place that is going to provide you with all the support services that you need. And the next slide, please. So what we're looking at here is just kind of the overall, the flow of the, how all of this, I don't want to go into too much detail here, but all the different parties and how this looks from pre-construction to customer generation. Again, we talked about the investor-owned utilities, meaning Southern California Edison, PG&E, SDG&E. They pretty much are at the beginning of this process. They have their own unique set of responsibilities under AB 2143. The DIR, you can see here outlined. This is what they're responsible for in terms of, there's also a contractor registration under their website. I see a lot of questions coming in along those lines, and we're going to answer those in just a moment here. Again, they're an enforcement body. They're going to make sure those prevailing wages are paid, certified payrolls are submitted, and that everything is in compliance under the DIR review, because the DIR is the party that enforces these labor code provisions that we've been talking about here today. And then, of course, what we have been addressing with you is the CPUC surge program. And what, again, we're here to facilitate that process of contractor registration, project registration, everything that supports the upload of the payroll information. So again, all that in place, you submit copies by July 1st and December 31st for that reporting cycle. And the certified payroll reports are archived under the law with the CPUC for 5 years. So that remains in place. So this just gives you kind of an illustration of who the parties are and what each different participant in this process is responsible for.
Right. Thank you, Sylvia.
You're welcome.
Okay, so that kind of wraps up all the content that we wanted to present to you all here today. This is like some resources that you heard throughout the webinar. We have visit the Surge website at cpucsurge.org. If you have any questions, our team will email you, or you can email our team, and then we can respond to that email at info@cpucsurge.org. You can also call our hotline, which is 1-800-549-2143, and also follow us on LinkedIn. We do a lot of our outreach in there, and we are sharing information and trying to grow a community where we can collaborate on, outreach efforts and education efforts to help, improve and streamline the processes for Surge. And with that, we're gonna get started with our Q&A. And I think we have one hand up already, so I'm going to just unmute you, Josh. Oh, hold on. Let me just. All right. You can unmute, Josh, and state your question.
Great. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, wonderful. Thank you for this. It's very informative. One question I have is, to what extent you all are speaking on behalf of the DIR, or is this your interpretation of DIR guidance?
I will defer that question to Sylvia or Amber, and they can respond. Yeah.
Thank you. Hello, Josh. Yes, I can answer that question for you. We're really not speaking on behalf of the DIR. We have experience in labor compliance monitoring, and it's part of our expertise in knowing how to apply and navigate through the DIR and labor code requirements. However, given that they are the enforcement body of this, they have their own set of responsibilities and a role in this process. So for the most part, anything beyond providing you with guidance in order to register and submit your payrolls in Surge, we're going to direct you to the DIR and their various resources. So you can see throughout this presentation today, we have provided links. We'll continue to do so. We will provide you that along with the presentation after the webinar today. So what we're going to do, in most cases, we're going to defer to the DIR for more technical enforcement related issues that, that is their area of expertise. So we're here to facilitate the process to make sure that AB 2143 is complied with and that you have all the resources you need to do so.
Hi, this is Amber. I would just want to add really quickly that all the material here that you saw about the DIR and kind of their process is very basic and also has been vetted by the DIR, so it's been approved. That same goes for the materials that mention the DIR on the Surge website as well.
Amber, sorry, this is Josh again. So just to clarify, the DIR has actually reviewed this presentation then?
The parts that mention the DIR, yes.
Okay, so just to add a little bit more color here, there's some information that was shared in this webinar that has never been shared directly by the DIR. That's incredibly consequential for the contractors that are on this webinar. For example, the idea that a customer is going to have to register as an awarding body and register their project with the DIR. There is a very valid interpretation of the law that that is not required. And there's been no guidance from the DIR that that is required. The requirements from when you read the law says that the contractor needs to pay people prevailing wage. They need to maintain and verify payroll records, and they need to submit those payroll records biannually to the CPUC. So the idea that a contractor may need to have their customer register as an awarding body and to register that project, that's not spelled out in the law. And so I'm a little bit concerned that we're providing kind of definitive statements that the participants on this call need to do those actions without something definitive in writing from the DIR that makes that clear. I should also note that in the legislative history regarding this law, there was never any discussion about that. It's not in the text of the law. So again, this is where I'm just concerned that we're telling contractors on this webinar that there are certain actions that are required of them where we don't have something actually in writing from the DIR. I think there is a case to be made that perhaps that's required, but again, there's also a case to be made that the law does not require that of them.
And Josh, if I may speak to that as well. I understand what you're saying in terms of we have a unique situation here where it is typically the awarding body that is responsible for registering the project. But what we don't have here is a public solicitation and the equivalent of an agency or awarding body. So per the Public Works Manual, for example, the rule is that if you do not have a public solicitation or in where to determine what is, for example, a bid advertisement date that drives the version of the wages that you're going to use, that you would look to the execution of the contract date. So again, this is just another example of interpreting requirements that are already in place. And where we don't have an agency, we're interpreting the requirements to read that, you step into it would be the property owner. However, to your point, that is something we can definitely, as Amber described, the CPUC does have regular sessions, meetings with the DIR. There's a point of contact. There has been discussion with them. A lot of the materials are, if not everything involving the DIR is vetted through the DIR. So this is certainly one of those items that can be put before them so that we can receive something more definitive.
I think that's a great idea. I will say that it's a little bit troubling. I know you all are doing the best that you can, but given that, as you're acknowledging, we don't have someone from the DIR here, and we don't have anything in writing from the DIR here. And I understand that you all have a lot of experience navigating public works requirements. It is a little bit frustrating that we're putting out to all the attendees on the call that there are certain requirements which may or may not be the interpretation of the DIR. And so I guess I would strongly urge, to the extent that there is another webinar like this where we're providing guidance to contractors, that we have a representative from the DIR who can provide definitive guidance on these matters, because otherwise it seems like we're engaged in speculation.
Thank you so much for your input, Josh. But we have a couple more hands up, so we'll go move on to the next question. Janine or Jeannie? You can unmute.
Hi, thank you. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Great, thanks. What prevailing wage classifications or what crafts are acceptable for solar and battery energy storage? And absent an awarding body, who determines the classification?
And I can go ahead and field that question as well. Thank you. That is actually determined based on the scope of work. So for example, in fact, really it wouldn't even be the awarding body that in most cases determines it, because the contractor is in the best position to know the specific tasks that are being performed on the project. So the way you would approach that is to look at the specific tasks, then go to the DIR, the website under the different crafts, the different trades, and there is an option that identifies the scope of work. It lays out in specific detail what is the scope of work for a laborer, for an electrician, inside wireman, for example. And then the tasks, the classification that most closely aligns with those tasks that would be performed, that's going to be the classification that you will use to for your workers as what's going to be the applicable trade. There are some trades, for example, and if you've had an opportunity to look at the DIR website so far, you can see that it is based on geographic region within the state of California. So for example, there are certain parts of California that don't have the classification inside wireman, electrician. And for example, in Southern California, they may use that classification for solar work. There is a classification under laborer in certain jurisdictions that includes solar work. So again, that's something that would be incumbent upon the contractor to go to the DIR website, the classifications, and look under scope of work, and then just compare the scope of work on the trade versus the scope of work that you'll be performing on the project.
Thank you for that answer. I have so we've worked on jobs where there have been 5 different unions that have claimed the craft. So for example, there is no solar installer classification, and the CSLB and others, including the Department of Apprenticeship Standards, have determined that solar is multi-craft, right? And so therefore, for many of it, is the contractor at risk if somebody makes how do you make that determination? Because one can choose amongst various different classifications. For example, some might say that it is construction specialist, others might say that certain parts of it are inside wireman, others might say that it's the journeyman carpenter classification. So, and for example, in that one project, we had one trade claimed the rack, another claim, and then glaziers claimed it because we were slapping glass. What guidance can you give us so that we know that we are doing something that is going to be accepted absent an awarding body that can provide certain guidance and help ensure that DIR is going to be supportive of that classification?
And right along those lines, just to continue based on what you're saying here, is to be, in conformance what the DIR's requirements are. Whenever there's an issue of there's some kind of nuance in terms of the scope of work, and there could be a multitude of classifications that align with that scope of work, that that it is recommended that you seek guidance from the DIR because they are the subject matter experts in that area. They have a specific division to which you can email. I believe they also have a telephone number where you can reach out to them, describe the scope of work that you're going to be performing and maybe the classifications that you're evaluating that could potentially identify the trade that these workers will work under. And the DIR would assist you on that because, again, this is their area of expertise and really outside of the scope of the surge program. We want to make sure to defer to the DIR for that.
Can you provide that information, that contact information for the
Absolutely.
DIR? And can you give an indication of how long that ruling process takes or how binding that is?
Ruling. Yeah, fortunately, it's typically not a ruling. There is a division that does provide support to contractors to help them identify the proper trade classification for their workers. So the response, I can't speak to how long it's going to take them to respond to you, but it's not something that has to go through some type of hearing process or, administrative hearing. It is something that is part of their support services.
Okay. And what is the mechanism by which or the vehicle through which you guys are going to distribute the information and how one contacts the DIR for this?
We have it on the Surge website, and we will also be providing that information as part of the follow-up documentation for the webinar today.
Outstanding. Thank you very much. That's really
You're
helpful.
welcome.
You. Also, just a reminder, we have 4 minutes for the webinar, but our team is committed to stay 15 minutes later. We do have 13 hands up, 13 hands up for questions. For all of the questions that were entered in the chat, we will make sure to address each one specifically, and we'll put out documentation with responses to those questions. We're not going to get through all of them in 4 minutes, but all right. Thank you for that last question. And then now we're moving on to Allie Floyd. You can unmute now.
Hi, can you all hear me?
Yes.
Okay, perfect. My question is pertaining to contractors or customers having to submit, register for a project through the DIR, and then also having to register through Surge. One of the questions that is asked before we can even register a project is this project already a public works under existing law? Well, technically, yes, it is, because you guys are saying that we have to register the project through the DIR. So all of a sudden now it's a public works project, and that's kind of like, it's just really confusing, and I need a little bit more clarification on that, because it is now under existing law, AB 2143, and according to you guys, from what I'm understanding, is now it's a public works project. So we only have to report to the DIR, because this will be kicked back. If we say yes, it's not going to let us register the project. So I'm just confused by that.
Yeah, understandably. Well, under the Assembly Bill, under 2143, where they talk about a public works project, if it's already a public works project under the law, it's exempted. What they're referring to here is public works projects that are characterized as such because they are publicly funded. These projects are not publicly funded. However, they become public works projects under a different definition under AB 2143. So you're not battling up against that same, where it's like a dual requirement. You're either a public works project because there's either some kind of state or federal money that is paying for that project. This isn't the case under these projects for the most part. I mean, there's some exceptions here, but we're not gonna go into that here. It's for the purposes of this, these are privately funded projects, but because of AB 2143, it is under public works. So when you register under the DIR's website, you're going through that registration process, then you're going through the registration process in Surge, and you can answer the question in Surge that no, under the law, this is not independent of AB 2143, a public works project, because you do not have public funding.
Then what would be the point of registering it as a public works project?
Because AB 2143 makes it public works even though it's privately funded.
Yeah,
So you have two different definitions kind of public works now. This is putting it under the requirements of a public works project. Maybe not the traditional legal definition, but it's putting it under that same set of regulations requiring certified payroll and prevailing wage as a public works project, but it's not publicly funded. So it's not the same type of public works project.
So if we have to register the project, do we also have to submit ECPRs through the DIR and to you guys?
Yes.
That's okay. So,
and the DIR has weighed in on that and agrees with that assessment.
So we register the project, customer, I mean, that's just gonna, like, going back to Josh's thing, that's gonna be absolutely horrendous to explain to all of these contractors and customers. Yeah, I'm gonna need something in writing from the DIR, because that just sounds like it's mistakes waiting to happen because there's too much going on. How in the world are we gonna track everything when we have to do dual duty in both places? Yeah, if we can get someone from the DIR next presentation, just so we get some clarification, like I said, and like Josh said, it's gonna be horrendous explaining this to our contractors. That's all I have. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. The next hand up is Christina. Let me allow mic. All right, you're able to unmute.
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes.
My question is just twofold. I want to clarify. The first part is that only the solar portion of the project in question would be subject to Public Works prevailing wage and project reporting through the DIR. And it doesn't affect the entire project as a whole. It doesn't taint the funding to the rest of the project, that it is just effective for the solar portion of the work. That's the first part of the question. The second part would be, what is the trigger that determines the prevailing wage date determination? Would it be the interconnection date received, or would it be the date of prime contract execution, as is normally the case with a public works or a prevailing wage project with the DIR?
Sylvia, are you able to answer?
Yes, sorry, I was having trouble getting the microphone on.
Oh, no worries.
With regard to your first question, the portion of the project that is going to be subject to prevailing wage is going to be the portion that is subject to the tariff, the net metering tariff. So the portion of the work that is subject to that's going to be the scope that is subject to AB 2143.
Thank you.
And then the second portion of your question, and yes, again, interpreting based on the DIR's guidelines under the Public Works Manual, the date, the applicable date, and there have been many decisions published along these lines, is the execution date between the property owner and the prime contractor.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
Thank you. All right, the next question goes to Jeanne Armstrong. All right, you are able to unmute.
Yes, it's Jean Armstrong. A question earlier in the presentation, and I can't remember which of the presenters said this, but they said that if you're subject to AB 2143, you have to follow apprenticeship requirements. There are no apprenticeship requirements in AB 2143. It's only prevailing wage. So I was wondering where that came from.
That's actually derived from public works requirements. So it doesn't specifically, within AB 2143 and PUC 769.2, it identifies labor code provisions that govern public works. And that's where the apprentice standards come from.
But the law is restricted to public works as it relates to prevailing wage, not as it relates to apprenticeship requirements. I'm just saying this because I don't know, I can't speak for contractors out there, but I would bet there's a lot of folks that did not know that they would be subject to apprenticeship requirements under AB 2143, is that the statute is not phrased in that manner. So this is another area that I think clarification from DIR is needed.
Yes, correct. And again, based on the information that we provide in terms of the contacts for the DIR, we would defer to the DIR for that determination, that decision.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. All right. Next question is Mike. You're able to unmute.
Yes. I think I received a partial answer at least earlier. Can you hear me?
Yes.
So the effective date was January 1, 2024 of the law. And so projects that were signed by the homeowner, permitted, interconnection agreement was submitted, but received, it was installed, and permission to operate was received after January 1, 2024. A single family home over 15 kilowatts of power, is that not subject to the law because it was sold and permitted and the interconnection application was completed in 2023?
A single family residence is going to be exempt regardless of the kilowatts.
Oh, it is?
Yes.
Oh, okay.
Single family home is not what's not referred to. It's not considered under AB 2143 an eligible project.
Okay, so what's the 15 kilowatt threshold? What does that apply to? That
would be multifamily units. So the first part of that exemption addresses multifamily unit over 15 kilowatt. So you may have an apartment building, for example.
Okay.
But not a single family home, regardless of the kilowatts. You could have a 30 kilowatt single family home and it would still be exempt.
Okay, great. Thank you very much.
You're welcome.
Thank you. All right, the next question is Crystal. You are able to unmute now.
I have a question in regards to having subcontractors on the project. How, as a prime contractor, are we supposed to monitor their compliance with paying the prevailing wages?
I'll go ahead and defer to Ariana, our senior labor compliance analyst for that. Ariana?
Thanks, Sylvia. Yeah, Crystal, to answer your question, so as a general contractor, you should be reviewing your subcontractor certified payroll records to make sure that they're paying the applicable prevailing wages. So you can request those certified payroll reports from them. You can also look in the DIR to see what they're paying. And that's going to be part of the safe harbor provisions for prime contractors. So those provisions can be found in the Public Works Manual because general contractors can be held liable for any of their subcontractors not paying the applicable prevailing wages. But there are steps that you can take to protect yourself from any violation. So that's called the safe harbor for provisions. So I will include the section of the Public Works Manual with our correspondence after the webinar is over. But essentially, you have to include the applicable labor codes in your contract with your subs, like all of the apprentice labor codes and the overtime codes. You also have to monitor their certified payroll reports to make sure they're paying the prevailing wages. If you have found that they are underpaying the prevailing wages, you have to take corrective action including and not limited to withholding their payment. And you must collect the Public Works affidavit prior to making the final payment. So those things can help protect you from penalties.
Okay, and then the the apprenticeship ratio is it going by the state DIR of 20%?
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you so much.
Brittany,
Yes.
I just want to jump in here because I've seen a lot of questions just regarding what is certified payroll. So maybe either Sylvia or Ariana can touch on that
Okay.
really quickly.
Yeah,
I can touch on that if you want. So a certified payroll report is going to include the payroll report itself. So we've had a few questions about this via email. So you can use the DIR's A1-131 payroll reporting form, or you can use your own form as long as it shows the correct information, such as the employee's name, address, social security number, their work classification, things like that. So that's another section of the Public Works Manual that I will share after the webinar is over. And then what makes it a certified payroll report is it must be accompanied by a statement of compliance. So in California, the statement of compliance is going to be signed under penalty of perjury, that you've complied with the applicable labor codes, that you have paid the applicable prevailing wages. And so if your payroll report does not include that statement of compliance, it's not considered a certified payroll report. That makes sense?
Yeah, that's perfect answer. Thank you, Ariana.
You're welcome.
All right, the next hand up we have is Patrick Lynch. I'm gonna allow your mic. You're able to unmute.
Yeah, thank you. You know, when going through the presentation, when you regarding the non-compliance, if a contractor is determined to be in non-compliance, what's the curing period, or how long do they have to cure before they're considered, obviously, to go into that enforcement criteria?
Part of the program that we're, part of the search program that we are supporting is to work with the contractors. If it is determined that they haven't submitted payroll, or if a payroll has been submitted that is incomplete. So that's something that we're going to be reviewing. We don't have a standard set of days or weeks at this point, but that is something we will certainly put together as far as a procedure. But contractors will be given the opportunity to revise a payroll report or to submit a missing payroll report in order to cure any deficiencies or non-compliance items.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
Thank you. Next question, Maggie Lopez.
Hi, everyone. I just had a quick question going back to, I guess, Janine's question earlier. You mentioned that the DIR could assist in classifying our prevailing wage based on our scope of work. I think I've been in contact with them since last year, May 2023, and I've done multiple attempts on reaching out to them from different departments, from the prevailing wage unit to their research unit to the division of apprenticeship standards regarding specifically solar install on the where we fall, exactly what would be classified for us. But the last attempt I did in March, I still am waiting for them to respond to us what classification to use. And I think that's been like our main issue with them. You said you have somebody that can answer this question for us.
We don't have a specific point of contact. We would just simply provide you with the links and the email addresses and in the resources. As mentioned a couple of times during this webinar, the CPUC is in contact. These issues and certainly the materials are run by the DIR. So we do have contact with the DIR, and that's certainly an issue possibly that can be brought to their attention, and maybe find the best link in terms of an email address or link on their website in terms of where you can get the most prompt response.
Yeah, I feel like I've exhausted all everything. I've been in contact, like I said, with different departments and different people, and my last attempt, they said they were looking into it, and it's been like 3 months or 2 months, and I haven't heard from them, so it's a little frustrating.
Understood.
Thank you so much for sharing. The next question is from Andrea. All right, you're able to unmute. Andrea Clatterbuck, are you still available? Okay, we're gonna move on to Janine. Janine, you're able to unmute.
Great, thank you. Thanks for taking a second question. My question is just how one calculates the 15 kilowatts specifically. I know that AB 2143 just says 15 kilowatts. For example, if you have we're in San Francisco, so a duplex with a garage as the first floor and 2 floors above for living space, that I think falls under AB 2143 as being caught under this requirement to meet prevailing wage. Is that if the system or systems in aggregate are greater than 15 kilowatts, how does one specifically calculate that?
And Janine, that is something that we would have to come back to you with a response to that, because we would have to consult with whomever would be a subject matter expert in those calculations. But that is something that we will make note of your question, and we will respond to you following the webinar.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Thank you. All right, we have Andrea. I'm gonna try again. You can unmute, Andrea, if you have the question. Otherwise, I just want to thank everybody for attending this webinar. For all of the questions that are in the chat, our team will go through them and respond to them and address them, and then also have those responses available to each of you. And if you made it this far, thank you so much for attending and listening to all the questions and comments and everything that's been going on. All right. One more last attempt for Andrea, if you're available. All right. Okay. Thank you, everyone. We're going to be ending this webinar. And have a nice day.
Thank you. Bye, everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you.